Welcome, everybody. We're getting a little bit of a late start between traffic and food being delivered late and everything. And, luckily we have Ignite updates to go through, so no big deal. No large announcements were made or anything, so it won't be a big deal. So welcome to those of you to Boston Office 365 user group. We've got a bunch of international users joining us online. So thank you all for making the trip to your desktops, I guess. So for those of you that are first timers, here's the slide with all the numerous different ways to get in touch with us. Feel free to come again, share this with all your friends. All right. Here's a list of all of our current organizers. We've got Mr. Dimitri, who's in the back here today. Myself, Mike Dixon, David Losey, and Jeff Borowski. Please send all complaints to Jeff Borowski. So last month, Sean presented to us, the government is automating and so can you. Anybody here attend that event? That was really good stuff, right? For those of you that... Yeah? Nice. So that one, for those of you that did miss that, we actually do have that up on our YouTube channel. So feel free to go check that out. And then we have updates. So one of my favorite updates is OneNote is back. Very, very excited. So for those of you that are, to give some of the background on this story, when Microsoft released Office 2019, or just prior to that, they had announced that OneNote will not be included in Office 2019. Instead, they were going to transition to OneNote for Windows because they had met feature parity with OneNote for Windows. Certain people in here will cringe when they hear Microsoft say things like feature parity, and with good reason, it did not have feature parity. So luckily enough of us screamed, and Microsoft actually does pay attention to user voice, and they have reversed this decision. Yay, there was much rejoicing. There's also going to be, they are apparently going to attempt to do this again in the future, but they're going to be doing a lot of integrations and updates to Office 2016 to get it caught up to the Office for Windows. And as of March of 2020, this will be included in the downloads moving forward. So it will be reintegrated back in. Until then, this is available as a standalone product for free. So you can go get off OneNote 2016 as a free standalone product. So good stuff for all the OneNote lovers out there. So Ignite announcements. There were lots and lots of Ignite announcements. This is by no means a complete list. There were many, many more. But these are the ones that I wanted to go over real quickly. First things first, we got to rename things. Because, why not? Life was too simple, apparently. So the simple one is Power Apps is now 2 words. So it's Power Apps. So it's going to be even harder to Google now. That's awesome. And Flow has been renamed to Power Automates.
What do you make with Power Automates?
You make flows. What's that? With a small f. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Of all of the products in the Microsoft suite, they felt the need to rename. That's not the one I would have picked. But anyways, Project Cortex has been announced. That was probably one of the really big ones. I'm not going to do a deep dive on that right now because honestly, I don't know a lot about it myself as I did not attend Ignite or any of those sessions. But in theory, it's basically a combination of artificial intelligence and machine-based learning that scrapes a bunch of content from within your tenant and builds a knowledge base within your tenant. Does that sound right for the people who actually attended any of those sessions? Yeah? All right, cool. A little bit of what it does. Yeah, it's going to do more in the future, especially once it has access to the DoD database. It'll be good. Upload sizes for OneDrive and SharePoint have been increased to 100 gigabytes. So that's a thing now. And then in the second column here, I grouped all of the Teams updates. Lots and lots of Teams stuff in here. The first of which is private channels. More on that later. There's going to be pop-out windows for chat and messaging. So for those of us that were looking to multitask within Teams, some of that functionality is coming about now. There's a tighter integration between Outlook and Teams, in which you can take a post and you'll be able to click a button that says email this post, so you can share it with people outside of that team. And vice versa, there's a button in Outlook that's going to say share this email directly into Teams. While you could email it into Teams before, if you knew the email address, you'll be able to do this without that email address now. You can actually just select from a drop-down list the teams and the channels, and you can do multiple teams and channels at once. I would imagine so, yes. @mention tags. This is a very interesting one. You can now create a tag and @mention a tag in a post. These tags can then be associated to users. Yes, sir, in the back. The mic is booming. I am on fire.
Just saying.
Yeah, it is set at max volume. Testing 1, 2, 3. Is this better? For those of you that are online, now that we're not maxed out. All right. All right, I'm going to keep going. Let me know if it needs further adjustment, guys. Thank you very much for that feedback. So @mentions are really interesting. You can basically add tags to users. So, for example, the example that they showed was logistics. So you can tag people as being members of logistics, but they're not really members of anything. I shouldn't have said that. You could just associate a tag with a user, and then in a post, you can @mention those tags, and it'll alert all users that have that tag associated. So think of it this way: if you have really large teams, it's a way to hit a group of people without knowing exactly who that group of people is. That's where it can be helpful. I haven't seen a lot of details on that, but it looks really interesting. So more to come on that as we learn about it. Again, keep in mind all of this stuff is just Ignite announcements. Some of this may never come to fruition. Who's to say? We're still waiting for Infopedia, things like that. Cross-channel posting. I actually saw this. So on the flip side of this, cross-channel posting is now available to those in first release. So when you create a post, you can now post that post in multiple channels at once, just by hitting a drop down in the toolbar for the post itself. There's going to be very tight Yammer integration that is coming to Teams, Power Apps integration, and the ability to pin apps to the rail on the left-hand side. So you won't have to hit that more button all the time to see all this stuff. So as they're adding more stuff in there, we're now going to be able to pin stuff in there so that we don't have to go digging for it.
Just one thing about the one with the private channels that's being left out there. When it turns out for every private channel that's created, it creates own SharePoint site.
Yes.
So that's the governance.
I have another slide about that. Yes. Correct. So thank you for the segue.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
So
Okay,
Teams private channels are here. So private channels are here. As of right now, private channels can only be accessed by a reduced guest set of the existing members of the team. Okay, so you cannot create a private channel and add somebody who is not a member of that team. Instead, it is a subset of the existing members. In addition to that, Chrissy absolutely nailed it. It actually spins up a dedicated site for that team. And one of the fun things that I noticed is that that dedicated site does not inherit hub registration information. So if your team is a member of a hub site, the private channel will not be a member of the hub site, which means if you're using hub sites to aggregate data up to a central location, that's broken. It does look like it can be added to a hub site, but you have to go to the site and manually do that right now. Yeah. There is.
Invite yourself, which is a huge app portal, and then you can manage permissions with.
Yeah.
And currently, and this is testing, you can convert a current channel to a private one.
Oh, it's only new
New, like, or back.
or back. So once it's right, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. It's so yeah. Use at your own risk.
I found another little thing.
Yeah.
If you decide to create a private channel and then you try to update the URL of the team, it does, I tweeted about this, it does not update the name URL for your new private channel. It keeps that whole.
Okay.
whole name. Yeah.
Whoever creates it, it's just like collection administrator.
It's like the team
Yeah.
is the channel owner and that is not necessarily the team owner.
Correct. Yeah.
So this company, you don't get a plan with that private channel.
Yeah. So
Oh my God, yeah.
I'd say while Microsoft has released it, please consider it beta and test the ever living crap out of it.
Remember the neighbors, governance.
Yeah, and speaking to that, one of my big concerns, and I haven't tested this out yet, but if you're using site classifications or any sort of security models like that, I'm guessing that if it doesn't inherit hub information, it's not going to inherit site classification information. That's me speculating. Test this if you're in that scenario. Please test it before rolling it out. And then test it 2 months later, because I'm sure it'll be completely different answers. So. Oh yes, you can turn off the ability to create private channels at the tenant level. So you can just tenant-wide say, nope, not playing this game.
So what I'm doing is I turn it off at the third level and I create policies.
Yeah,
So I create a policy to be able to create a private channel and then direct that to individuals.
right.
Yeah, this is that,
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a good way to go, especially in the beginning. Yes, sir. Still some microphone challenges. Turn it down a little bit more. There are mic challenges. We don't have it. That's a completely different group. Can you guys hear me okay? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. I know you guys in the room can hear me. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the guys in Holland. All right. So moving on. Teams and to-do is apparently to be merged to create Teams tasks. I don't know, David. They didn't ask my permission.
I read that article, it looks like it's still using to do. And then you get your tasks for planner, and it looks like it's just trying to find a way to merge all of the tasks into one.
Yeah, there's.
That was one interpretation of it.
Yeah. Microsoft Microsoft Teams is a very fluid space right now. Well, yeah, that's not what I meant, but yes. Yeah. All right. And to help us with all of these new private channels, we get even more SharePoints. More SharePoints. So the tenant maximum for SharePoint sites, which was 500,000, is now being increased to 2 million. Bill, I'm sure you're the only one who's going to touch this. Good luck, sir.
We're working on it.
You have new breathing room. Oh yeah, Staples is going to be there too.
Oh, man.
They really don't though. Their storage costs nothing. It's pennies. So anyways, that's the thing. Much more from Ignite. We'll do lots of follow-ups in the future as some of these products mature and as we figure out if they're going to actually be vaporware or not. So, and feel free, please tweet us. Tweet us if you find other things, if there's other things you guys want to talk about. And in particular, if you guys are interested in anything, we could do a deep dive in a future session. So let us know what kinds of things you guys want to hear from us for future sessions. We'd be glad to, take a deep dive, explore all this stuff, and then share our findings. So, all right. Awesome. Oh, I did that a little early. There was one more. Play my emails from Cortana. So we now have an AI that can read our emails, and what this does it actually is extraordinarily big, brother, because it not only reads the emails, but it'll assess how long it would take to read these emails and alert you as to which emails it feels are important to you.
So Mike, I got a good AI story. So I had a new colleague join last week, and I was doing SharePoint training with him. He's been on SharePoint before, and apparently he went to Korean news site prior to our meeting. And then, so we're doing our thing, and he opens up SharePoint, he goes, why is this in Korean?
Nice.
And there's no way to turn it off.
That's awesome. All right. So without further ado, huge thanks to our platinum sponsor, Turn Digital. So thanks to Turn Digital for our grub. For those of you online, if you show up, then, there's pizza. So come join us for pizza.
By the way, there is more pizza coming. So
that's weird. Nice. Well, Mark, I hope you're not planning on standing up there for too long, because it's now your turn. All right. So without further ado, Mr. Mark Anderson is going to tell us about the future of content types. In theory.
I didn't say the future, but okay.
I'm saying the future. I'm sorry. Mark is going to tell us all about the past and history of content types.
A little of that.
Little of that. All right, cool.
Does that work? Yeah.
That works. Red bar. We're good.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see all these familiar faces. I got to stay back here, right? All right. So if you know anything about me, you know that content types are like my only friends. I really like the idea of a good information architecture. Everybody in this room uses SharePoint, correct? Hands up. And keep your hands up if you use content types. Oh, I didn't catch anybody. Because you all have to use content types if you're using SharePoint, right? Thought that trick question would get somebody, but it didn't. There we go. That. Okay. Forget that. You know who I am, right? Anybody want to know who I am? No. Actually, I will talk about. I think they're still at home. So I do want to actually mention this new PNP repo. You may have seen me tweeting about it. It's called SP Usage Docs, and The idea is to sort of, I've always been a big fan of the people who live in the middle, right? They're not end users, they're not heavy duty developers, they're the people who actually make pretty much everything happen. You know, the customizers, the citizen developers, the power users, system admin, or not system admin, well, system admins too, but site admins. So what we're trying to build there is a set of articles that will really help people understand how to do things as opposed to what to do to make something happen. So, you know, support.microsoft.com has great articles that say click here, click here, click here. They don't necessarily tell you why you would do that. Some of those articles are very good. And then there's a lot of documentation from a developer standpoint. So we're trying to fill in some of that middle ground. And we've got, I don't know, probably 20 articles so far. If any of you want to write anything, yay, please do. Take a look at what's there. This is open source, so it's something that the community is going to generate. And I was just talking to some folks at Microsoft today, and it's going to be moving into docs.microsoft.com sometime in the next couple of months. So if you write something, lots and lots of people are going to see it. So that's sort of cool. And if you see something there that you disagree with or you think you can improve, please do. Well, don't disagree, but you know. Actionable disagreement. So I do this talk sort of in two different ways. One is to talk about information architecture in general, and one is to talk more about content types. So this is the more about content types take on it. But I think it's really important to understand what information architecture is in general. Most of the people in this room who I know already understand information architecture, but it's something that we don't always practice. We don't always practice what we preach. The idea is that we need to come up with some sort of structures that enable us to think about our content and recognize what something is and how best to, what metadata it ought to have in order to process it through whatever we need to do, however we need to use that content in our organization. This is the Wikipedia definition, so it's got to be right. And you know, the one thing that I really like about this is the art and the science, right? There's not an answer to information architecture. There are some better practices, there are some things that we tend to do, but we make a lot of decisions about things like, should it be a content type? Should it be just a drop down in the document content type that classifies it in a different way? There are a lot of different ways you can go with this. The more you do it, the more your gut starts to be right about how you manage information architecture. But I think that there are people who practice the science. If anybody in here has a library sciences degree, then you're an awesome person. Yay! There you go. So people like you can sort of look at this idea, the information architecture idea, and translate from the library sciences world very easily. You probably got to study about the electronic version, not like when I was in college and everything was carved in stone, literal stone, like we use chisels. So I was talking to somebody, a potential client today, who actually still does everything on paper. And if you think about it, that's the way the world used to work. And they've got filing cabinets all over the building, and those filing cabinets have stuff in them. And that stuff is, when you go to a filing cabinet, it says things like invoices or, customer orders or whatever. So things that are in those filing cabinets, the way they label those filing cabinets, those are content types. And I think they're actually going to probably have an easier time going from filing cabinets to a good information architecture in SharePoint than a lot of people who have used shared drives in the middle, because we've just been dumping crap into piles and then wondering why the piles still smell sort of funny. It doesn't really give us any benefit, right? A lot of editorial here, right? So
depends on how many of those filing drawers are labeled miscellaneous.
Yes, which is what your shared documents library is, right? Yes, it's where you dump stuff, general, right? It fundamentally is a people problem as opposed to a technology problem. Information architecture is not something that technology solves for us. Though when I talk about Cortana, there are some things, or sorry, not Cortana, Project Cortex. There are some interesting things coming that will help us do better, make better decisions, but it won't do it for us. So when I think about information architecture in SharePoint, I think of this whole list of stuff. Am I missing anything that you guys think is really important?
I was taxonomy.
So,
Navigation.
okay, cool. Yep, missing them. Okay. I sort of, I might lump them into one of these other things, but you're right. Those are equally important.
Would site type?
Sorry?
Would site type fall under site topology?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of think of it in there. How do your sites relate to each other and what kind of sites they are? But yes, that.
Communication.
Right. So, I mean, the point is, I didn't even get them all, and I thought about it pretty hard. So, there are a lot of different aspects of thinking about an information architecture in SharePoint. I'm going to focus on site columns and content types today, pretty much, though obviously I'm straying from that quite a bit. So, it's just part of the picture. This is a idea I stole. Anyone seen a file name like that before? Oh yeah. I explain that as overloading the file name, right? There's just way too much going on. So people always say, but metadata is a pain in the ass. I'm never going to put in any metadata for you. And then they show you a file name like this, and you can say, well, there's the modified date, there's the project name, there's the file name, there's the modified by, there's the version, there's some random BS that nobody can explain. New 2, was there a new one? I don't know, we don't remember. And then what's the status? I stole this from Louise Fries, and she tweeted it, and I asked if I could steal it. But it's a great way to explain the fact that some metadata added to objects. This file is an object of some sort. We don't know what sort it is, really. It could be a master plan. It could be a Death Star thing. We don't really know. Could be a project thing. So people are absolutely willing to deal with metadata, but they don't want to deal with it in the way that we tell them to. So we have to think about how to do that well, so that we can get them to stop naming files like that and instead add pieces of metadata to things. So what is a content type? This is sort of content type 101. It may not be news to any of you, but to me, it's a collection of structured and unstructured data. Usually we are either dealing with list items or library object documents in a library. Everything's sort of based on that. And some of the stuff in a document library is a blob of content. We don't really know or care what's inside of it. When I'm working on someone's information architecture, I don't go and read every single one of those things. I want to look for patterns. But we wrap some metadata around those blobs so that we can understand what they are and how we can, like I said earlier, how we can process them through whatever it is we need to do with those things, right? There are things like invoices. Think about the filing cabinets at this poor company that I'm going to try and help out, I hope. Vacation requests, status updates, facility capabilities, all kinds of things that your organization think about as units of information in what you do. And everybody's is a little bit different, right? I mean, the vacation request at my company is, I'm going on vacation on Thursday. Vacation request at a big company is to fill out a form and get your manager to approve it and make sure the VP signs off and all this other stuff. So everybody's idea of even very simple concepts is actually a little bit different. They're all sort of the same, but they're not exactly the same. And the not exactly the same part is what makes it important for us to understand how to build our content types to represent what our businesses actually do. Every content type that we build inherits from an out-of-the-box content type. So you really need to know about what all those out-of-the-box content types are so that you can both reduce the amount of work that you do and also inherit some of the goodness that comes with those out-of-the-box content types. So for instance, if you wanted to have department events, gee, it's got the word event in it, I probably should inherit from event, right? And events have, start date, end time, why they use those two fields instead of things that were congruent, I don't know. Location, you can add recurrence, things like that. So an event has certain magic about it. So you want to inherit that magic if you're building an event-like thing. We most often inherit from either item or document because those are sort of the core, the base things. Almost everything in SharePoint is based on the item content type. That's where we get that column that we love so much, title, right? You have to have something or it's nothing, right? So an item just has a title. We don't use a list that just has item very often. I'm sorry, just has title very often, but sometimes we do. Just a list of values that we want to use in some other way. So content types really are made up of a bunch of different chunks of ideas. So inherits from, and an item doesn't inherit from anything other than some .NET nonsense underneath the covers. It's got a name, so this one's called item. It's got some columns it gets from the content type it inherits, from which it inherits. Item doesn't inherit anything. Content type specific columns, title is what item has. And then a whole bunch of system managed stuff that you don't really have to pay a lot of attention to, but you sort of do pay attention to: created by, modified, and modified by. SharePoint manages that for us, and it's sort of immutable. I mean, you have to pull some monkey business if you want to change those values without being the person who touched the actual object. Each other content type that is in a list inherits from item. I'm not going to go through all of these details, but those for those people on the phone, event inherits from item, schedule inherits from event, and documents doesn't inherit from any of those, but document is another content type that inherits from item and adds that specialness, which is that blob of content, which we think of as a file name, right? But you can see how the inheritance model works, that goes back to the underpinnings, the .NET underpinnings, and sort of that coding mentality where you inherit classes and things like that. So it's a pretty powerful concept, and it's really what underlies all of SharePoint and a lot of the goodness that it gives us. So if we want to create a new content type, the most often one that I think that we end up using is document as our starting point. We might decide we need a content type called contract, because in our business we manage contracts all the time. We want to make sure that we understand a little bit more about what a contract is other than just that document itself. So we inherit from document, we get the title and the file name. We might add some fields or some columns like contract date, contract amount, when does the contract expire, who's the contract owner. And if you work in a very large organization, you may be tempted to add 150 other pieces of metadata, but that won't work, right? If you have too many pieces of metadata, then metadata doesn't work. So, there are 4 here. I always tell clients it should be 5 to 7 plus or minus 1 to 2, because that's specific. But there's no answer here. You want to have the metadata that's required in order to make this object valuable without making people suffer. And sometimes you can collect, you might have 10 or 20 pieces of metadata that are collected throughout a process, but they don't. It's never more than a chunk of 5 to 7 plus or minus 1 to 2 at any given time. So you're not overburdening people with entering a whole bunch of data. I actually have seen a custom list with over 200 pieces of metadata, all of which are required. And it's
used a lot.
Yeah, well, and they had to use it. Like, it was part of the job and you had to do it. So people were spending literally all day not filling in good data, because you learn the tricks, right? I don't have to put this one in, or I can put this one in and I can copy 3 times down. And it's like when you fill in a form on some website and it asks you for your email address, and then it says, now retype your email address. Well, what do? You copy and you paste that email address. So if it's wrong twice, right? So complex content types are not really a favor to anybody. And a lot of the time, in those 200, there were a bunch that we could have inferred from where we were, who was using the form, who's your manager, what's your phone number, what's your email address. We already know that stuff, right? So we want to make sure that we don't ask people for things that frankly is pretty stupid to ask, and you're just creating more errors. So lots of times, since you all raised your hands and said you were using content types, and I assume you didn't just mean document, because this is what happens. This is what happens in most people's libraries. That same guy I was talking to today said, I don't like SharePoint. And he said, but he was realistic. He said, well, I might not like SharePoint because the implementations might have been bad. I don't know if you guys remember when Doc Tsai used to say, SharePoint doesn't suck, you suck, right? It's not the platform that's bad, it's the implementation of the platform. So you see this all the time, or at least I do when I go from company to company. They may have a great information architecture most places, but you'll find this somewhere in there, and people don't understand why there's no magic happening, right? Well, I want to search for all the contracts. Great, you're going to get everything with that word in it, but that's not necessarily very helpful, right? So if you notice, all those file names have some information in them that is, sort of descriptive of what that thing is, but they're all documents, and they're all in one document library called documents. So what good is going to happen? Not much, and even worse, you might have 12 folders deep, right? Seen that before? Sure.
And many dead kittens.
Huh?
Many dead kittens.
Many dead kittens, yeah. It's like a pile of dead kittens. So it's all about how you use this platform, and that's really what determines whether you get any value out of it. So, taking a look at a document library like this that has thousands of documents in it, maybe in a bunch of folders with names like that, but everything's a document. You're really just using SharePoint as a ginormous file share, and you're not going to get much out of it. You certainly can't ask questions like, how many proposals did we lose in the last month? You'd have to hire a temp, and they'd have to spend 2 weeks going through that document library. But if you have a proposal content type, and you have a status on that proposal, won or lost, and you have the date that you submitted the proposal, it's only 3 fields that you would need to populate. And then you could start to filter or search or whatever, however you would go about this. Programmatically, you could get at it. You could actually weed out very quickly, which proposals were successful. How many did we lose? Let's figure out what happened. Let's use all of this content that we've got to make better decisions. Has Ralph written any status updates this quarter? I happen to know that Ralph's a little lazy, so we have to check him every quarter to make sure that he does his status updates. If you're just having everyone dump their status updates into a documents library, you're not even going to be able. You can't even consider answering that question. How much revenue are we generating for each kind of contract? We might have 12 different kinds of contracts that we use, one for each product line or something, and we want to understand how does that segment out. If you think about doing some BI. Putting some BI on your sales. Well, you can't do it unless you have some sort of information along with all of those contracts to help you build up that visualization using data. But machine learning, right? AI, it's going to solve everything. I don't think so. When we get to the end of this, I'll actually, Project Cortana is it's intriguing. I think it's going to start to help us do this stuff better, but I don't think it's going to solve it for us. So I don't think we really can say, well, let's let the machine figure out where our contracts are and what the value is and all those things, unless this stuff progresses quite a bit further. And even if the machine can figure it out, even with did I say Cortana again? I did. Yeah. Project Cortex. I think even with Project Cortex, which really looks cool, we still have to train it. So we have to understand our contents and our information architecture in order to make Project Cortex provide value for us. So the machines aren't here to take our jobs quite yet. So to me, you see all of these beautiful, you go to things like Ignite, and you see all of these beautiful screens, but almost everything that's on that screen relies on some sort of metadata, some sort of content type structure in order to make that even happen, right? You can't do most of this without having a good information architecture under the covers. So, you know, all of these things still today are greater than the little robot in the back. So that's all great. Does everyone agree we need a good information architecture? Anyone want to step out and fight me? Huh?
Feldman does.
Feldman does. Okay.
Actually, most of my end users would probably argue. Yeah.
Well, they will. They will unless you demonstrate the benefit,
And
right?
Yeah, they're still.
Well, if you only
They do what's in it for me, and if they don't
Right.
do what's in it for me, they're not going to bite, and that's the challenge I'm having.
well talk about helping them make better decisions, and it gets a lot more interesting. I get it. I do this for a living,
But what
so
doesn't help, Mark, is Microsoft seems to be pushing our end users now to syncing their folders. They love syncing their libraries, which they're now calling folders again,
right.
to their laptop. And if you want to save an email from your Outlook, you used to be able to save it directly to a SharePoint site. You can't do that anymore. You
Right.
have to have that SharePoint library synced to your laptop before you can even save the email directly into a folder library.
Yeah.
And so now there's no metadata involved when you're dragging your documents into your folders on your laptop. So it's like, I feel like we're taking a step backwards.
We
Feels that way.
do occasionally take a step backward, but I like to think that we're taking 2 steps forward every once in a while too.
Again, I'm still trying to figure out how to convince these people to use
Yeah.
metadata. Because I've got some people totally convinced they love the metadata, they're getting
Yeah.
into it, they see the filtering, they see it, and then other folks just don't really care, they just want to place the dumb stuff.
Yep. And that's always going to be the case. Some people are just never going to want to do it. I think you always have to look for, you know, what's the quick win for that group of people.
That's what
You know,
I'm
how
trying to
can
do.
you convince that group of people? And convincing them is not by asking them to put in a bunch of metadata.
Exactly.
It's by showing them something cool that they couldn't have done otherwise, and then they sort of get it. But you gotta. Sometimes it's hard to find what that thing is, right? You know, a bunch of busy MDs would be an example. You know, it's all about the patients or salespeople. It's all about the sales. Why do you want me to put in a piece of metadata? Does it help me sell that product? Well, nope, forget it. I'm done, right? So it's harder with different audiences. Absolutely. So if we agree that we need a good information architecture, we need to manage content types, we need to understand our business objects well enough so that we can make good decisions, that we can run good processes, we can have flows. Here's your pizza. Pizza.
More pizza.
Then you have to think about, well, if you're still in classic, you've sort of had this worldview, right? We've had these giant pyramidical kind of structures in our farms, usually on-prem. We may have just picked these things up and moved into the cloud, so that we still have this kind of structure. But and I keep doing this, and I keep forgetting to take this slide out because I can't remember why I put that red circle there. I have no idea what I meant when I did that. I know I did this presentation once, and that red circle was really useful.
Hub, maybe.
I know what it was. Yeah, no. You know what it is? In the old days, we could build our information architecture right here, right, and take advantage of it all across, right?
Yeah.
So that was really cool, right? A lot of smaller organizations only had one site collection, so we would build our whole, the content type part of our information architecture in that root site, and then every other site could take advantage of it. And then when we created our second site collection, we sort of went, right? We didn't know what to do if we still needed some of those same ideas. Well, now modern SharePoint doesn't even, we don't want people to think about it the same way. We want people to think about everything as a very flat site topology. It's /site/ a bunch of stuff.
There's more food, but you don't be shy. Together, let's less food.
All right. So if you think about how we used to build those content types, where we would build them in the root side of a site that looked like this, and we would reuse them in all kinds of places, and that might be our only site collection. Now we're starting to recommend, and in fact almost demand, that people not use hierarchies anymore. No more subsites, even though they sort of let you do it. I would recommend you not use subsites because there are a lot of other benefits for not using them. So we have this big flat thing, and we need to figure out, well, how can we share that information architecture across the sites where it matters, right? Now, when we were creating the content types in the root site of the site collection, they would be available in every site. So we might like have a benefits document, and we'd create it up in the root because we weren't quite sure if anyone other than HR was going to use it. But rather than building it in HR and then having somebody else say, we have a benefits document too, we would build it up here. But that would mean it was sort of cluttering up the whole site collection. Every site had a benefits document, and people, if the site owners would say, why do I have that? I don't know what that thing is. Why would I ever have a benefits document? So it wasn't very selective. Now we might build that benefits document content type in the HR site, and nobody else would have to care about it, right? Because it's isolated in that HR site. But we also might have some things that we want to use across multiple modern sites. And so we have to think about, well, how are we going to manage and deploy this stuff in this modern world? Because the way it works is just quite different. So we have a number of different options. And they're certainly not all equal, and they sort of fall on a spectrum, I think, of based on who can sort of do it, who can use the tool in order to get something accomplished. Oh, you're taking a photo. This is like my least favorite slide in the deck.
Well, I meant to take the other one, and because it took OneNote a while to load, because I'm loading it directly into my OneNote.
You want to go there?
Oh, thank you.
I'll give you the slides if you want them. But I like the picture thing. That's cool. You want me to stand in front?
Hey, Chrissy, rotate it.
No wonder. I had it.
Do
Okay,
it this
I'll
way
do
to get
it.
more of the slide.
I was doing the, there you go.
And now for a brief
See,
admission.
the online folks are
Intermission.
missing the comedic element, right?
Yes. So you're good.
I'm good.
You got the movie of the slide. Okay. Awesome. All right. So there are different ways that we can start to think about instantiating things that are sort of content type like. Okay. Not necessarily content types. One is this per library template idea, which I'll show you. Has everyone seen that? No, maybe not. We can create content types in an individual site. So like in HR, we can create that benefits document content type. We're cool because nobody else wants to use it anywhere else. We can use the content type hub. Does everyone love the content type hub? I actually sort of love the idea of the content type hub. The execution of the content type hub, not so great. And it gets worse as you have that flat site topology.
It needs a push button.
Yes. Now we have some other new stuff. We have site scripts and site designs. Has anyone played around with those? Cool. Yes, I know you have. To me, that's the tool to use to create content types across your tenant these days. And I'll show you how that works. And then, of course, you can run PowerShell. You can write code. You can do Azure Functions. You can do Azure Logic Apps. You can do all that cool developer-y stuff. But then if you need to make a change, it's a lot harder, right? You don't really have a very malleable information architecture if it's all hard written in code. So per library templates are this idea where you can, how does that work? Yeah. So you can basically upload a file that you want people to use as a template, and it'll show up in the new menu when you go to the document library, and you can associate that template with a content type. So it's sort of the backwards way from what we're used to. We're used to creating the content type and then adding the template to it. Here you add the template to the document library, and then you can associate that template with a content type, or not. So the or not part is what makes it really, really easy, right? We can upload that template, and then in that particular document library, we can instantiate that template, and we're always going to have consistent documents. It doesn't do anything for us with metadata unless we associate it with a content type, really, because it's a very local solution, right? So there's no enforcement, there's no sort of reuse, there's no whatever. But it solves a very local problem in a way that an end user can do it. And so that's a good thing, right? At least it gives them an option to do something a little bit better.
So Mark, one of the challenges we had when we started using this, and this, it all went away, right, as I was showing, literally having a meeting with somebody, showing them how to do a template, all of a sudden I could do a template. What I found was if you want to keep your templates in a library, it won't let you upload one of these templates from within. You literally have to have it on your desktop. It has to be in a folder to be able to upload it. But I found if I took my templates library, synced to my laptop, I could then upload it from the templates library that synced to my laptop. It would let me do that, and then I can do version control in that templates library.
Yes, because you're trying to do all kinds of fancy stuff.
We just want to be able to control our template and change it, and we're
Right.
marketing company. We're trying to figure out
Right.
how to do it.
This is not what you want to use if you're thinking company-wide, or if you're thinking about any kind of, well, even department, if you think that there's going to be more than one document library where you want this thing, right?
Which we have. We've got system documents, we've got,
Right.
policies, governance, and all that stuff. Yeah.
So you're right. You have to upload something from your desktop. That wouldn't be very
Or in the olden days, you could keep it a templates library in
Yeah.
your site, and then you put it to your content type, and then if you updated your template in your library, then it would update automatically.
Yeah. So the thing. Nobody told me you were just seeing my doorknob.
I'm doing exactly what you're saying. You're having to.
I couldn't do it a couple of months ago. I haven't tried it since about August.
All right.
This is a rapidly changing product.
So I just create a document library called templates.
I did too.
And then from there, I can associate multiple content types in the documents. that
For one of them to do it, so maybe it's changed.
So that I did this while you were staring at my doorknob. I added a template. I hate it when people stare at my doorknob. So I picked the proposal thing. I have to pick it from my hard drive. You're right. I can replace it, so I can evolve that template. But I have to know where it is, and it's not connected to a content type directly here. So there's my proposal, and then I can edit that new menu. And I can say proposal, and then this little ... that you don't notice, right, is connected to a content type. It actually, it's saying change content type because I've already connected it with a content type. But you can connect it to a content type. So sort of a backwards way. You didn't know that was there.
That's new, yeah.
No, it's not new. It came with it, but ... And you don't see the ... unless you hover over things. So that's sort of lame. It's a bad UI, but at least you can connect it to a content type. The content type still has to exist. And if you're doing things the old way, the content type already has a template. So maybe you're not thinking about it that way anyway. But again, from an end user standpoint, that's not such a bad thing, right? Because I can create a new proposal, and God knows what's going to be in that document.
Is there any way to remove that link template?
Oh, look, it's a proposal. I think, edit new menu. No. Those squirrely people.
But,
yeah.
So this is interesting. I've actually never used this particular interface. I always just go into the document library settings and then manage content types from there.
Yes.
Which gives you the old interface, which has been there forever and ever.
Right.
And it looks like it's got all the same functionality, but it also will not be the ability to move stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're like,
Right, so you're talking about the old way of going into that content type that was vendor contract, and you'd have the template in advanced settings. You've got the template, right?
And then you can just paste the URL.
Yeah.
So to your question, you don't have to upload it. You just have to.
You can point. You're pointing to.
I know that way.
Yeah.
At one point, I tried doing this. Maybe it was at the list level, and the content happened at the list level because we were there. I wouldn't really do it. Again, this was a struggle I had probably in May and June when products seemed to be going through a massive amount of change.
I think you were holding it wrong.
work with my left hand on this.
Did you recommend keeping the template at the list level then, not in the content type?
No, I mean, I would recommend that you do have a central templates library and you point to that, because then you sort of have a management
And I find the
bucket.
best way is up here, the edit template, up here. I go to the advanced content types and I edit.
Yes, yes.
Do you recommend that they have to have the template extension, or can they just have a regular document extension?
I find that most people have no idea what templates really are, of either kind, right? For some reason, the concept of template is not, it's not necessarily something people get. It's
So
like,
it's not required to have like, Word.
no, I mean,
document.
you know,
It could be a
if
Word
you use
document.
DOTX and that launches, and you go to save it, if you don't do anything, it'll just create it as a DOTX, and then you'll have a DOTX file, which means that you might not find it in some searches and stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to think about your users, and yeah.
It's weird, but it seems to me that the Microsoft DOTX template does not correlate to what SharePoint refers to as template at all.
Yeah, I tried both. I like
So
the
now I
browser
just use
template.
DOTX.
And you can tell, don't index that library.
And a lot of people just say, well, my template is the last one I did, right? You know, the last proposal. And we all do this, right? We go on our hard drive and we find the last one that we did, and we open it up, and we make a whole bunch of changes, and then we go, oh, shit. We have autosave on, don't we? And so you've just overwritten all the stuff that you just did, but you know about versioning now is up there, so you can see. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, you know, I think this solves a very local problem. It's a nice way to help end users bring a little bit more order to their world. To me, it's not the solution. It doesn't really go far enough. But if they're willing to do this, let them do it, because it shows them having this glimmer of, I want some structure in my life, right? Something all of our kids say they don't want, but they do. Go to bed at 9:30, you little bugger. All right, so, good, no doorknob. All right, so I just showed you that. So those things are great, but like I've already said, you know, they're available only in that site. They're really only available in that list. They're a very local solution. So historically, we've turned to the content type hub. You know, if you've only ever had one site collection, you probably never even knew it was there. If you were on-prem, you didn't have one unless you created it. If you're on SharePoint Online, a lot of people don't know that they already have one, but it's a /site/content type hub. So basically, the idea with the content type hub is that you create your content types there instead of in any other site. You build them up with your site columns. You build that metadata around them, and then you decide that you want to publish that content type, and you wait 2 weeks, 5 minutes, something like that, and that content type shows up in every site collection in your entire tenant or farm, right? When we had pyramidical site collections, it didn't matter so much that it was showing up in every site collection, because it was sort of we tended to have fewer site collections. Modern sites are site collections, so we have a lot more of them, and we're getting those content types to show up in a lot more places. The biggest problem is that thing where the content type hub is just so damn slow to publish those things. And if you're working with an end user who says, but I need to upload all these things today, maybe it shows up, maybe it doesn't. You know, you just don't know. I mean, generally it happens within a couple hours, but I've seen it be 2 weeks, which makes no damn sense, right? It just makes no damn sense, and there's no way to predict it. It's been a little while since it was 2 weeks, but so that service actually sits on top of the managed metadata service. So it's the same service that is the same service that's syndicating those content types that is making sure that the managed metadata is available everywhere. So you'd think that would be sort of important, and it would be quick. But, so have you guys all used the content type hub? Do you know what it looks like? No. We got some no's. Huh. Doorknob? No. What have we got? Come on. All right. So if we go to the content, come on. If we go to the content hub, again, it's a predictable URL unless you've done something weird in your tenant. No, if you're on SharePoint Online, that's where it is. Period. So it's actually a classic team site, as you can tell. Okay. It's a classic team site, and it looks no different than any other classic team site. So the first thing I do is I add something really, first time I go into any tenant, I add something really garish. I don't particularly like the color pink, so I use the color pink. Sometimes yellow. I don't like the yellow that much either. But something so that you know you're there, because otherwise you can get sort of confused. So the gear up here, so I really don't know what's going on. Come on. It's like my whole machine has gone into a coma. Should I stop streaming?
So there's a tweet from,
This isn't yesterday, is
there's
it?
a tweet from Microsoft to investigate an issue with user base experiencing internet failures or errors or attempting to access SharePoint Online on OneNote.
Okay, that's us.
Don't worry, it's only every week.
Only on every other day.
All right, I'm gonna not fight with that. So the big difference. Did it just? Yeah, it's got my whole browser hung up. It's got my whole machine hung up. I don't think we can blame SharePoint for all of this, can we?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the only thing that's different is when you go into the content type, there's a line at the bottom that says manage publishing or something like that. And you go in there and you have publish, publish, republish, or unpublish, which is a weird one because it doesn't really do what you think it would do. If the content type's in use somewhere, it doesn't go away. So it works. I mean, it's still something that a lot of people have used the content type hub over the years, and so once you're sort of invested in it, there's no easy way out of it. So if you're still using it, keep using it. It still does the thing it's supposed to do. Once those content types are syndicated, they work. I mean, you're getting that consistent IA, so you're not in horrible shape. But if you're starting from scratch, if you're building a new information architecture, though you all have great information architecture, so you don't really need to know this, right? I think these days the best thing that you can do is to build out some site designs. So site designs are a way to, if you remember the old save site as template, we would sort of build a site and make sure that we had it pretty much the way we liked it. We'd save it as template, and we would instantiate that template whenever we wanted to create another site like that. Okay, it's the same idea, except instead of saving the entire site as a template, we start with a team site or a communication site, and then the site design is applied on top of that. So you're always starting with a reliable base, and the site design basically runs a script that instantiates stuff you want in that particular site design. Okay. The one I get to use the word idempotent or idempotent, so why not, right? I like the word. So you have to worry a little bit actually you have to worry a lot in your site designs about idempotency or idempotency. And that's a term from programming which talks about when you run the same code twice, you should have the same result every time. So the idea with site designs is that no matter how many times you run them on a particular site, you'll always end up with the same state. They're not destructive, but they can be destructive. So you have to You can delete some things, but you can't delete many, and you have to explicitly decide to delete something. The idea is that you're layering more capabilities onto your site as opposed to you're trying to take away stuff from your site. So if you operate from that perspective, you're in better shape. And I really think that's the way the future is going to go. I think that site designs are going to be much more usable than they are today. I think I can imagine the UI that could go on top of all of this, so that instead of writing JSON, you actually can sort of configure things in a nice UI and drag and drop columns and things like that. I think it'd be really cool. I can see it in my head, so I don't know why they haven't built it yet. So a site, this is what a site script looks like. And if you look at it, if you're not a developer and you look at it, it might just look really, really scary, right? This is JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation. It's got the word JavaScript in it, so clearly it's bad. But it actually makes some pretty good sense. The squiggly brackets and all that stuff is just how we sort of delineate chunks of things. But it's basically mean value pairs, right? So if we start up at the top, we've got a little chunk of it's really data, right? We're using this data, a way of storing data to sort of inform a script engine about what to do. And we're saying we're using the verb create site column. That makes sense, right? We know how to do that. We know how to create a site column. We're going to say it's a date and time column. We're going to give it the internal name of contract date. We're going to give it the display name of contract date with a space, because that's prettier, right? And it's not required. That makes sense. Like, you could see yourself doing that through the UI, right? And then the next, so this is a really simple example, but let's say we're going to create the contract content type now called vendor contract. And we're going to instantiate that content type, and then we can have sub-actions, with some stuff up here I talked about that. We can have some sub-actions like, let's add a site column to that content type. There's the site column, and I'm just adding it to the content type. So now I have a content type that has an extra column added to it. Not that complicated, right? If you get a big site script, it can be pretty hairy to look at, but if you think about it, it's just building up from these kinds of bricks. The things that matter for item potency, I'm not sure item potency is a word, but item potency, is there, in some of the, for each verb, there is generally something that you need to specify in order not to have new things created every time you run that site design. Because otherwise you would, for instance, end up with a new site column called contract date 1. Or I'm sorry, the second one would be contract date 0, and then contract date 1, and then contract date 2. So you'd run it over and over again, and you think, well, everything's great, except that none of the things are working the way I expect them to. So you have to be a little bit clear on how all of this stuff works, if you're writing your site scripts by hand. So you could sit down and write this. Anyone want to do that? Probably not. So let's see how we can actually do that a little bit more easily. Maybe. Let's see if we can. If we can't, we can't. Yeah. Is it really SharePoint? Is SharePoint really having a problem? Well, I'd go there, but I can't.
I said that sarcastically when they answered earlier.
I feel like there's something else going on in my machine, though.
Marc, every other day, documents, pages,
your glass is half empty. This feels more like my machine. My what? I'm using the new Chromium Edge. Something's using a hell of a lot of something. I don't have anything running really.
How would you run with those?
It's great. I mean, it acts like Edge, or I'm sorry, like it acts like Chrome, but it's Edge.
No capture sheet if you use phone?
No, no what?
Capture sheet if you use phone.
If you well, since we're here, I'll teach you something else, right? Because I can't get anything else. If you look through here, you're going to see a whole bunch of processes for MS Edge. So it's just like Chrome in that you get a process per tab. So it's still memory hungry because it's the same engine. It does some things like, there's some right there. This one's not responding. That would be the problem. I'd love to. Anybody know any jokes? Wow. It's just getting worse. I don't know if I can even get back to my slides. I'd love to cancel it. Oh, good.
You can see it all.
We're sharing the thing all around the world.
Excellent. Excellent. Huh? Oh, it's highlighted and I've right-clicked. I'm waiting. I could reboot, but then Teams wouldn't work that well anymore, would it? Anybody have any questions about content types?
So, for the text script
Yeah.
are there blogs or certain resources that go over if I wanted to
Yes, absolutely. And I would love to show you that. So where I was going to go next was I was going to show you that what I recommend is you actually go and build out your lists and libraries the way you want them in a site. So the same way we used to, right? You build a prototypical site, you sort of set it up, you put things in there, you tear them down, you change your mind, you argue about what the site column should be called. You go through that whole same process. When you've gotten where the 80% rule, there's a PowerShell command you can run to export that structure, and I would show it to you. Let's send the whole tree. Let's just kill it. I'm not a murderer. So you can export a specific list or the entire web, and the entire web one just came out right after Ignite. So that will then sort of take what you've done and give you the site script that you like. I got that one by exporting it from a list, and then I just snipped out a bunch of stuff.
So if we wanted to fit in all of our content types and a library that has them all, like all on like a template.
Yes.
You could just export from that library.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's probably going to be easier for you, depending on what changes you're making, right? So say I had that site script that I showed you. It's nice and simple, right? And I want to add another column. I'm lazy. I copy paste. I change the name, right? And then I use that site script and just re-register it, right? So once you've fiddled with them a little bit, it might be easier to fiddle with them to make smaller changes. But then having that prototypical site sort of match that site design is sort of nice anyway. So sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of another, depending on how complex that site is, right? One of the nice things about, I don't know what the hell is going on here. One of the nice things about site designs is they can be made up of multiple site scripts. So for instance, if you have a contract library and a status update library and some other really important library, you can have each one of them in a site script. So you can be sort of modular about this. And then you can do choose one from column A, one from column B thing into your site designs. So you build up a library of site scripts, add them to site designs based on, did it die? No, not yet. I'll just wait for that to happen now. So if you can think a little bit like a programmer about this, but also like a library sciences person, you can start to build up a nice library of capabilities and then mix and match the way you need them, which is pretty slick. So the nice thing about these site designs is you apply them when you want to. You can make a site design the default. So for instance, if you wanted every single team site you ever create to have a specific library in it, you could make your site design the default instead of team site. I mean, it's still a team site, but you know, when you create a team site, you have that little drop down that I don't think has anything in it. And actually, it doesn't show it in team site. When you create a communication site, there are 3 options. Those are effectively site design. So that's where it manifests in the UI, which I would be happy to show you.
Default content or default templates?
Yeah. So you have, you know, I showed you 2 verbs, create site column and create content type. There are probably about 30 or 40 verbs, and they just added a couple new ones that are actually really helpful. One is add folder, another is something like copy file in here. And so they're adding verbs all the time. Not all the time, not fast enough, but they are adding verbs based on us asking for it. So great using voice thing. So there are a lot of different things you could do. So for instance, a particular site design might apply a logo or an icon that is of this site. You can apply a theme. You can add a SharePoint framework solution so that you have some web parts with some extensions applied to that particular site design.
You don't use it as a theme?
It doesn't do anything with themes. I would say yes.
Because I'm looking to do is we're giving this to a style project. So we're putting together a structured way of requesting projects. We want to have a team with different documents that are available so that you can run the whole process that we're designing.
There are templates for teams now, though, right?
I think so. I don't know if the templates also include content as well. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah, well, all the content goes into SharePoint, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
So,
saying.
yeah, so there's.
I know you gotta be careful because if you're doing it into a SharePoint site, it's like 4 hours later, you just kind of forever to build it. Like, I learned this from the hard way, like, my channel name in SharePoint site.
Yeah.
A couple hours later, he goes, no.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's the other thing.
You know you're not supposed to do that.
I did not know that. No, I do.
This is why you can't have many. So, there are different ways that you can apply it, and I would be happy to show it to you. So one is programmatically, right? You could run some PowerShell that says apply this site design to this particular site. And if you think about it programmatically, you know, you might have a whole bunch of existing modern sites that you want to apply new site design to because you didn't have those before. And so that's you can apply the site design when you create the site. So when you go, choose site, give it a name, you can choose the site design from the drop down, and it will apply it as right after it creates the site. Or you can just go to the site, go up to the top, and choose site design, and apply that site design. So that would be what you would do in your case. You create a theme.
Somebody, one of our users online has mentioned that your system is stopping when on recovery.
Should I just reboot?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to tell all the interesting stuff because those people online don't have to hear it. In your case, you're creating the team, Deb, right? You're creating the team, and you know that SharePoint site's going to be created pretty much right away. Could make that default, but that would apply to all team sites that you create. So that's probably not what you want. But you can go to that team site, go to the cog site designs, choose that site design, and then just apply it.
So it's a little manual.
Can you do it through Flow yet? Like, could we set up a flow that would create the team site and then apply a site design?
There's a PowerShell command to do it, which means
Yes.
it's got to be a CSOM command to do it, which probably means you could do a REST call from a flow if you had to. I don't know if there's a...
So we have a question from a user online. With the site scripts, what are the options for large-scale modification or removal of columns? Excellent question.
You're not online.
No, I've unmuted my mic. They can hear you.
I'll just wait. So the idea of site designs is not to use them to tear down stuff. That's really not the intent. They're for creating things. They're about giving life, not snuffing it out.
Okay.
So you know, if you wanted to remove
Getting
a whole
all
bunch
religious on us.
if you wanted to remove a whole bunch of site columns from,
You explain all.
I could do both. So if you wanted to remove a whole bunch of site columns, you would probably do that some other way. You do that with PowerShell. If you wanted to remove those site columns from future sites using that site design, you would remove them from that JSON, or get rid of it from the site script, and then the next time you instantiate it, those columns wouldn't be there. But it's really not meant for tearing things down. One of the nice things that you can do in a site script or site design is, and this is something I would encourage anyone who's doing good information architecture to do, is when you create a content type and then apply it to a library, list or library, which is one of the things you can do in a site design, make sure you get rid of the default content type, which is often document, because otherwise people just choose documents so they don't have to put in the metadata. Lazy people, right? So you can delete certain objects. That's one of them. So delete content type is one of the verbs. I don't think there's a verb for delete site column, and it doesn't seem like it would be a good idea if there was one.
He's content to let you take over.
How's that? Am I back? Anyone hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
Is that better? All right. No. All right. It would if I were only going to open one browser tab, but that's just not the way I roll. All right. So here are the slides. But I was going to show you a site design thingy. I'm going to go back here to that guy. I had all this ready, I really did. This isn't much better. Send feedback. All right. It seems like the browser's working okay. All right. Seems to be Windows Explorer that's getting all hooked up. All right.
Marc, this is a challenge I'm having. We implemented SharePoint back in February. great, really great about putting them in front of me.
Well, I'll be honest. I've noticed that SharePoint Online has been getting slower.
He's been fine. He's got an open space that isn't like Microsoft.
Yeah.
Similar, maybe just feel like that's good as they are. And they're still going, it's not the way we expected. My boss was out of Baltimore, and he SharePoint as their client side to do audits, couldn't get on the same thing. I think you can use so quickly. I talked to my colleagues that were like, they're fine.
Fine is a relative term,
So they're
right?
not seeing
And how many people are there in North Dakota? This is my machine though. I'm editing code in Visual Studio Code, and that's not going fast. That has nothing to do with SharePoint. So, you know, I was going to show you some of this stuff. I guess I'll try to do it. So I said that you can create create your information architecture in a site, and then you can export it, right? So if I look at, actually I should look at site contents, but what am I doing? So here I have vendor contract. That's my content type that I've applied to this site. And if I go up a level, I can see the site content type that I've used. It's got contract date and contract amount. Pretty snazzy, right? So if I go back to, so this is running PowerShell. So this isn't necessarily fun stuff for end users, but it's not a lot of PowerShell, and it's not horrible. There are a lot of samples of this stuff. It's running in this terminal down below, and it just created that temp.json. So basically what this says is connect to this particular tenant, grab this list, contracts temp, and get the site script from the list and put it in the temp.json file. So that's what the site script looks like for that particular list.
So that will collect that you need for the list and all the content.
Yes, yeah. So this one, so actually that list does not have a content type applied to it, but you see what this would do is it would create that list, it would give it the same name, it chooses the document type or document library type. It adds these columns to it, most of which I actually don't want because they're system columns. But that's what that would do if I used it in a site design. If I change this to, I don't know why I had it set to that temp one, because that doesn't have a content type applied to it.
And exporting them. Is it grabbing just the columns, or is it also grabbing the list settings?
It's grabbing some of the list settings. It would be nice if it was all of them. This is something that, again, I think user voice is going to be really important for, because the team that's working on this, they're all really nice people, but they're not moving forward fast enough for my case. Site designs came out a year ago, and they really haven't moved forward a whole hell of a lot in the meantime. There have been some improvements, but not a lot. So this is the contracts list instead of the contract template. You can see I'm creating a site column, creating a site column, creating a content type, right? Because you can't add the content type to the list unless that content type exists. So it figures out sort of backwards what you need to build in order to instantiate, in order to create that list in a site design, right? So, again, if you went through this, even though I know you're not a coder, you would go through this stuff. You don't want me to tell anyone that you're a coder, do you? No. So, if you go through this, I think it would make some sense to you, though. I mean, it sort of reads. Like I said, there are some things that you don't necessarily need to instantiate because of the idempotent nature of the way site designs work. It wouldn't hurt anything if you left that there, but I tend to strip out the stuff that I don't care about, just keep things simple so that I actually can understand the JSON. I have a view defined in that library, so it exports that view. You notice that it's got some, I think it's got some filtering on it or sorting or whatever, so it's good with views. It doesn't export view formatting or list formatting. I don't think. I'm not sure I've tried that.
And speaking of views, let's say you actually had multiple views.
Yep.
And normally would it incorporate all of these?
Yeah, you get them all. You get them all, flunk. So you create the library and do all the configuration, and you pretty much get the library out in this site script. So it's pretty cool. You know, you wouldn't want to just use this without reviewing it a little bit, because you'd want to make sure you got all the juicy bits. But I think you get pretty much everything you want. So that's pretty cool. And then when we register, so registering a site design is the next step. So I have the site design. Here's my contracts site design, and then I can instantiate that site design. So I won't do all this, but basically you register the site script, sort of put it up in the library. We don't know where they go. It doesn't really matter. And then we say with the site design, all right, I want this site design to have this name and description and this list of site scripts, the GUIDs, which are nice and pretty. And then you've registered that thing. And then I can go back into my browser as an end user. And if I'm in this site, you know, you could send out an email that says, hey, everybody with site type B, go and rerun the site design. Not very productive, but you could do that. And I'm a good user, so I'll go in here and I'll click Site Designs. These are all the instances of that site design running that have happened in the past. I've done a lot of testing here, so you can see I've run this thing a bunch of times. But I can go and choose a site design, and these are all the site designs that are registered in this tenant. You can permission these, you can restrict them to just team sites or just communication sites. So if I want to create the contracts library, here's what it's going to do. That's pretty much what you see in the site script, right? Same basic verbs. And I say apply to site, and it does its thing, okay? So that's me as an end user applying that thing. The other thing we can do is we can click on SharePoint up here, but it's not there. So if I go to create a new site, and I'll do it from the admin center, it doesn't really matter. This is the same UI that you would see if you went to the SharePoint homepage. I choose team site, and you'll notice that I have my site designs here, right? So as a user, if I'm doing user site, what's that, self-service site creation, then you have those options, and they would be better named options, because adding the contract library is probably not what you would call it. But you can say that, you can say foo, because that's the important name to call this thing. Me, and then next. So it's gonna create that site. Here, 7 seconds, boom. And if I go here, oh, I created it from here. So where's foo? So now if I visit foo, it's actually running that site design right now. See, applying site design, updating a view progress. If you want to see what's going on, you can click on that. You can see what's going on. So you can see the various aspects of the engine here. Pretty powerful stuff. Yeah.
So I've been looking into this stuff since you first mentioned it to me 3 months ago. And one of the things that I found is people have been talking about this over limits, the number of actions.
Yeah.
Can you get a little granular on what constitutes an action, and is that a limitation per script, or your design can have multiple scripts?
Yes.
Or grand total for all of them?
Yes. You can register up to 100 site scripts, and each site design can have up to 30 site scripts associated with it. And each site design has to have 32K or fewer characters in it. Weird one. But there are 2 ways that you can instantiate a site design. One is sort of the UI-ish way, and another is programmatically. The programmatic thing, I can't remember the command, I'm not going to look for it. But basically, you can push it onto keyword and onto extension. So if you have really big site designs, then you can definitely use them, or you can apply multiple site designs to the same site. I mean, there are lots of ways to think about that. If your site design is that big, it might be telling you something, not sure.
Well, but that's why I was curious, what constitutes an action? Like, is
Yeah.
the creation of a single column? an
No,
action?
it's the verbs. So I showed you verb, create site columns, create content types.
Yeah.
Those are the actions inside a site script.
Okay. So based on that, every column is.
I don't think that's the limitation though. It's you can have 100 site scripts. Those site scripts can be very long. I don't know, and maybe that's a 32-page character limit too, but I'm not sure. I don't think so. Then you can have up to 30 site scripts per site design. And you have 2 ways to apply the site design, one of which lets you do different stuff. I haven't heard a lot of stories about people actually hitting those limits. I've heard a lot of stories about people saying those limits are too low. But no one's shown me an example of something that didn't work.
Okay.
So, I mean, you might run into those limits, and you get that there's some mitigating ways to get around it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that all make sense? Questions about site scripts, site designs?
So global administrator.
So, sorry?
Global administrator.
Global administrator.
Can't be site collection.
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah. So these things get stored someplace magical that only the global administrator can get to. So that seems to be the way that most things go in SharePoint Online now. You end up going through an admin to get these things instantiated or sort of stored up in the cloud where you want them. I'm not a big fan of that because those people just love saying no. Is there any one of them in here?
No.
Aha!
I don't say no.
It's got to be a collaborative effort. You got to make friends with your admin, make cookies. I don't know what it is. What's your Achilles heel?
I'm Army of One for 50,000.
So how many cookies does it take? Or is it a beer?
That's why I have to do that.
My project.
Yeah. That it can be a sticking point. I keep waiting for that renaissance in IT to happen where everyone's service oriented. I know you are. There's just too many people, right?
So Marc, the challenge of service oriented is how you keep it secure. And that's literally, this is what we're dealing with.
Depends on the organization. Whatever your governance model is, you've got to adhere to that. Absolutely. When you're creating one of these site scripts, though, or site designs, as an admin, you can read the damn thing and you can see what it does. It's very rare that I find an admin who says, these are our rules. Does this meet our rules? Let me take a look. Oh, it's okay. Let me do it. They just say no. So like, what are the criteria? No, right? So, if you're going to have a good overall architecture and you're going to provide good value to your users, I think this is just a really important tool. The content type hub was the same thing. I mean, that site collection was not available to anybody unless somebody lets you have it, right? So there are always some places like that. All right, what time is it? Should I stop yet? What time am I supposed to stop? You know I can go all night. All right. Well, I don't have a lot of other stuff to talk about anyway. One of the things that I know that I've always struggled with is, okay, you create all these content types, people use them, they assign, they create content, they use those content types. Where the hell is this stuff? So you want to make a change to a content type. Who is it going to affect? Or you want to delete a content type and it says this content type is in use. Where? And you go on the top and you destroy the thing and it takes forever. So if you can get admin access to the security and compliance center, which is a separate provision, right? But there's this cool thing called content search that actually is a
it's a search mechanism that's really designed to help you find things like content types or content that has a certain shape to it, right? Huh?
I have a PowerShell for that.
You can run PowerShell to do most of these things, but for those people who don't actually like PowerShell or don't even know how to spell it, I misspell it all the time. So let me see if I can actually get there and show it to you. So if I go to security and compliance, this is my tenant, so I can go anywhere. Search, content search. And I want to look for that vendor. Yeah. So I actually have a search saved for vendor contracts because I've decided I wanted to know about my vendor contracts. I can view these results. So those things are sort of kept fresh. So if I want to know where is all of that stuff, this actually is pretty fast, and I have almost no content in this tenant. But if you're able to get to an admin screen, you're definitely used to waiting for a while, right? So you get a pretty good result set here, and you can export that result set and then make decisions on it, or run some automation on it or something. I guess I haven't created any, but you get the idea. So it's sort of like I end up talking about ShareGate at least once in every information architecture discussion, because I think that their tool is really helpful to help manage a lot of this stuff. Using their content inventory tool to help find where content types are used is also another way to go. But this is built into the product, so if you haven't bought something, this works. Okay, and you notice that this search query is pretty much it's the same search query you would do in a search UI, but here you get all of the results, not the first 100 or whatever it is you get from a regular search. You said something.
No.
Okay. Any questions about that? The Security and Compliance Center is to me, it's a place that an information architect ought to have some access to, because there's a lot of stuff in here that allows you to, if you think about the kinds of things that an IA person cares about, some things like retention policies, things like content types, all of this stuff sort of falls into a fuzzy bucket. So to me, this actually seems like a place that information architects ought to be spending a little bit of time. Information governance, all kinds of things that are part of that full picture of information architecture, because they address the ideas around the life cycle of these things as opposed to just the structure and layout. So if you were playing that role, I think it's worth having that conversation about getting access here.
Marc, I'm just curious if search and security and compliance is that only SharePoint, or also looking at
good question. I don't remember if I've looked at that. This.
It's the entire tenant, including even your text, upload, emails.
I don't think there's a way of doing it. They all share.
Yeah. So it's all those places. So I think you're probably noticing there's a trend that a lot of these tools are rising up a level.
Yeah.
So the managed metadata service is part of the Project Cortex. Project Cortex thing is really rising up to a Microsoft 365 level. It's not just going to be a SharePoint thing. We're going to be able to use those same taxonomies across other objects within the services. So, when you look at this content search, you see it's got a lot of places that you might search where you wouldn't think of content types applying, and they don't. But that doesn't mean they won't sometime soon, right? I mean, I'm just doing a key, a search with particular terms here, and it's only going to apply to SharePoint stuff because that's the only place that it's true. But Microsoft Search is what that's talking to, not SharePoint Search. It's a different, it's a higher level engine. Speaking of Project Cortex,
What about the future? Thanks for the segue, Mark. You're welcome, Mark. All right. So, when I went to Ignite, I mean, I knew this was coming, but as I saw them laying out this story over the course of the week, I was actually, I'm very impressed with what's going on. From an information architecture standpoint, there's a lot to this. I'm not going to try and tell you everything about what Project Cortex is, but from an information architecture standpoint, what we're going to be able to do, this is just a high-level slide that doesn't, actually wonder if I have the right slide. I don't. This is the one that no, not that one. So, did you see this? Content type gallery. So the content type hub is, it's not going to be replaced per se, but there's going to be a higher level thing that's going to be a content type gallery that has like a real UI to it and actually does stuff that we want it to do. Push to a particular place, pull from the gallery. So sort of the things that we've wanted for 10 years, those things are coming. So that's one cool thing. The other thing is, I think there's a picture there and it's too small anyway. The engine that where you're going to be able to do something like, you might take, maybe you have some PDFs that represent invoices to your clients, and you can upload, 5 or 10 of those things. Tell Project Cortana, tell the engine to scan those, and they will suggest, the engine will use machine learning and suggest metadata that's inside those things that you might want to include in a content type. You sort of pick and choose and reorder and stuff like that, and then push save, and you've got the content type in that content type gallery. You can also, you can pull up an instance of one of those invoices and highlight which fields in that invoice you want to shove into those metadata fields. So every time you upload an invoice, it auto-populates those pieces of metadata. Now you stop. You can take away some of those conversations of, I hate metadata, I'm never going to put it in there, because the system's going to do it for you. I haven't seen this actually work other than in demos, but I made Chris McNulty promise me that it really was doing the thing that was on the screen. It wasn't fake. And I talked to Sean Squires and a couple other people. So this is actually running in their tenant. It is real, and they do this all the time. I suggested that they turn it loose on docs.microsoft.com and see what articles they need. That'd be sort of cool. It's also going to do things like, if you have acronyms in text, it'll highlight them and tell you what that acronym means and stuff. Yeah?
Actually,
Okay.
Yeah, I saw it in my tenant.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So there's this sort of giant engine sitting underneath all of this stuff, and I think you're going to start seeing it starting early next year, which is not very far away, and sort of the first half of next year, and then it'll just keep evolving. So that's where the little robot is going to start maybe doing some stuff that's a little more impressive than we would have expected. It seems like we're sort of at that tipping point with machine learning and AI, where we're going to get assistance, right? We still have work to do. We still have to train those models to understand what those invoices are and highlight things that we want to pull out. And I think that's a good idea, a good thing, right? I mean, it's going to guess wrong a lot of the time.
Some people are still going to continue this, the contract until metadata for it.
Yes, right. So it's actually going to, you upload the file, and 30 seconds later, it's like running a flow on a document. It's like if the flow pulls the data out of a PDF or a Word document. Then
Well, you say that this is going to be an automated auto classification system.
Actually, when I saw them demo it, I thought, oh man, I'll put out this. But I'm not sure it's the same thing, and I know Knowledge Lake does a lot of other stuff. So it really looks at classification for a while. But the idea of scanning something in and turning it into sort of OCR and turning it into data.
That's been on for a while, but a lot of times you have applications. Right.
Yeah.
Over all these different types, each classification system where to do it.
Yeah. This is, I think, going to sort of bring it more to the masses. That said, I expect that there's going to be a higher level of there's going to be something that they will. It's going to take a lot of CPU to pass. Or I was talking to a couple of people in the product group, and I said, so, you know, it's going to be E5 or E18. I remember specifically, I said E18, and they're like, oh, you know, they just aren't there. They haven't talked about the licensing implications, but I can guarantee you, and they agree, it's not going to be free or cheap. But it's going to let you accomplish a lot. So, you know, what my big wonder is always, does everybody have to have it, or does the person who's setting the information up have to have that?
That's what I was just wondering. Yeah. Because if you just buy one license, it's kind of
well, the answer is probably no. You know, it's just like with Power Automate now,
Right.
getting more expensive because they actually are running a lot of CPU to make that stuff work, and it's too free. Now, I agree with the business principle. I don't agree with the way that they've announced those things.
Yeah, missed it, and then all of a sudden you got into the budget, and then all of a sudden, boom, you can't afford what you just can't afford to say no.
It's what every good drug dealer does.
And just a little added for the unstructured information. So like when you have a contract that has like a consistent format, but like what if you have documents with information in various formats?
I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to start to see a little bit here, where they're going to start to offer us insight into, you know, what does our content corpus tell us? Or, you know, what in that pool of content are we not seeing? I mean, there's definitely sort of, you can tell with what they're doing that I don't know what kind of musicians are writing that, but we'll just think how the goal has looked like. I think from what I can see, that this is an engine that's going to underlap a lot of the Microsoft 365 platform, and it's just going to keep cranking it fast. I think they have to look at, you know, what's our cost per CPU cycle over the next couple of years, so that they can think about what they need to accomplish. And I think they're sort of pushing the envelope.
This is incorporate like stuff like this, not like anything.
Yeah. So think of all of these things as rising above just SharePoint and just, you know, Clinton or just whatever. All of these services are going to start to get a lot better. Microsoft Search is a great example. You know, that if in your tenant you have the search box up at the top of the screen, it flops up there and everyone goes, "Where's the search box? We're all going to die." We had a client who had their production tenant on target, and that Tuesday was weird.
It went away for a couple of hours, right?
Huh?
Last week, it went away for a couple of hours in the search box.
I didn't see
Three of my
that.
end users go, "Where's the search box?" I look, it's gone.
Huh?
And then a couple hours later, it was back.
Well, lots of times it loads really late. It's one of the last things that loads, and sometimes it just doesn't get it. Like the cog that I was trying to.
Yeah.
So if you have that search box at the top, when you're searching, you're actually searching across whatever fits into Microsoft 365 game as opposed to just SharePoint. So you're starting to see these services elevate, and you're going to get a lot more. I think there's going to be a lot more value to having things, using more of the services because they'll have that blue on the top. My glass is half full on all of them. I'm pretty excited about some of the things.
Can you say some improved Delve?
Delve was a first example of how you could use the Office 365 graph. Right? So they sort of built the graph, and Delve was almost like a demo. Ooh, you can see stuff that other people are working on. Why can people see what I'm working on? So sort of was getting people past the freak out stage. If you think about what Delve does, that stuff is embedded everywhere. You know, you have file cards, you've got people cards. You know, file cards now are starting to show the people who worked on the file. People cards are starting to show the files that those people have worked on. So all of that sort of Delve-like magic is showing up in the places because they have the power to do it. And now, does anyone still go to Delve? Yeah.
Which is all.
What?
and all because you didn't like it.
There was a lot of that. There was definitely a lot.
There was those days, hey, why are some people sneaking in this class?
Yeah, which they don't. But so, you know, I think
Delta's
the
a great
Delta's
way to
still
figure
there,
out
and there's
who's
still a
pretty
team working on it. I don't know what the hell they're doing.
I haven't seen Delta will be giving us the alert chart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're using.
But again, the services are starting to knit together, so you don't really care where things are, right? Which is the way it really should be.
But cool.
Yeah, I mean, for a while now, we've been saying, well, you know, if you want to do this, go up to the waffle and find this thing. Now we're getting like the web parts where you can embed Planner or Gamma, so you don't really have to go places, you just do things. Which is, I think, the way it should be.
I see Project Cortex as a double-edged sword with no handle.
So you're a fan.
No, it worked very good. I definitely want to see where this goes because of the fact of where I come from. I've always fought for the information architecture. But at the same time, if you have the wrong person who's manning that cortex and he's creating, without understanding what he or she is creating, that could be
So all these wrong people who I keep not meeting, we need to fire all of them. You know, somebody's doing a job they don't know how to do, then that's not their fault, right? We need to fix that. When this thing first comes out, no one's going to know how to use it. So, you know, it's part of the community thing needs to help make that work.
So governance is definitely going to have a huge part to play when this comes online. But you have other things too. You're going to need. It's like you go with taxonomy, with this. Like, can you even do that anymore? Using things from Termstore, but it's like.
So Termstore is getting a new UI in the next couple of months. And it's one of the things that'll come with the first.
Hopefully,
part of this whole
size of it too. Huh? Increase the size as well.
Yes, actually, the notes of this slide has increased term and synonym limits up to 1 million and 2 million.
And will the LMS now will it then support poly hierarchies as opposed to just single?
No, see, now you're starting to pull out that graduate degree. I don't think they're going there yet. I think so. I keep thinking about, you know, we've been on this 3-year product journey with them, except that we've had to see everything as it happened.
Okay.
Now we've sort of gotten up onto this next mesa, right? Okay. And now we're playing around up there with things like the term store. They left that down at the bottom. They forgot to haul it up to the mesa, so it's coming up here, and then they'll start building new things on top of it. Because until they modernize that engine, that service, I know the guys who built it, and I've been chastising them for years, because when they built it, they didn't go far enough.
Right, yeah.
But they did some things that were just heinous because of the computing power at the time. You know, those big GUIDs and, you know, the way the terms are. So programmatically, it's awful. 7. Okay. So I think once that's modernized, you're going to start to see. No, I don't know that they're going to. I don't know that they're going there next. I haven't heard anything, but I would expect we'll start to see. You know, if you think about like modern libraries, when they first came out with modern libraries, they didn't do much, but once they were there, they started to crank, right? Because they had a good base to build on.
Well, you have to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But they sort of have to haul up to the right level to actually build new stuff.
So, yeah, and the MLS, even though it's under the umbrella of the project context, I'm guessing in terms of the pricing of it, that the component wise, there's going to be certain parts that might be rolled into certain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can look at sort of everything that this touches as being expensive, but I think that the term store is also rising up a level, like to Microsoft 365 level instead of just SharePoint. So we'll have that taxonomy across, like let's categorize our emails that way or whatever, you know. And you can imagine all kinds of fun tagging, right? Huh? And then the little robots will come along and do the tagging for you. It's starting to feel a little Skynet-ish. Yeah, but the people in Redmond I know are pretty benevolent, so I think we're okay so far. We haven't reached the singularity yet.
Yeah, Microsoft One project. That's terrifying.
All right, that's all I got. Was that enough?
That was enough. Thank you,
I
sir.
already said all that. Oh, if you, I'll give you guys the deck. This is a list of the sessions about Project Cortex. I mean, I think if any of this is interesting to you, you should go watch some of them. They were really cool. From an IA perspective, where's Chunkwise? This one's really cool. And this one. I mean, they're all worth seeing, but they sort of, the earlier ones are very much higher level. The lower ones are more detailed.
The Intranets did
Yeah, they just did a session on it. Yeah, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's also Microsoft Mechanics.
And there's some other stuff. Oh, if you're going to dive into site scripts and site design, just go read this. Laura Kokkonen, she keeps trying to teach me to say it. Kokkonen, she's from Finland, so she's got too many letters in her name. She keeps updating this. This is a blog post, but it's like this, and she keeps updating it every time they make a change. So it's written in English language. This article or this page in docs.microsoft.com is just a little too Debbie. This isn't less Debbie, but it's got words wrapped around it that make more sense. Yeah. So the PowerShell and the it's sort of like stuff that you would have to go around and find lots of different pieces. She's got all the pieces linearly in the order that you need to think about it. So get your admin person to read that. And it's got little flowers on it and stuff because she's got this beautiful blog, so it's not scary. It doesn't have any sharp edges.
It can't be scary if it has flowers.
That's right. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Sorry about all that trouble.
That's all right.
You want your thing back?
Yes, please.
Let's see if I can find it.
Okay. Wouldn't that be magical?
Come on. There's her blog post. See, it's pretty. There are flowers on there somewhere. There we go. Flowers, see? How can it be bad?
It must be easy. It's not flowers. Awesome. All right. Well, while you're pulling that up, anybody have any other? I'm just going to jump into the last half of the deck because we need to get going. But anybody have any questions about anything Office 365 related issues that they've run into? No, it's been working perfectly for everybody. Because I've been watching the status thing, the health status for Microsoft the past couple of days, and it has not been running beautifully.
Last night at 8:30.
Yeah.
We're all home, right?
I have a question. Everybody has such experience. So I'm doing some teams, right? So the team, you have a lot of people chatting around.
Yeah.
And for these chatting around with the web Microsoft on stage is a highly exposed. Does anybody have any like a PowerShell script to into this show on the order?
Who can turn on? So what do you want? What do you want the PowerShell script to do?
To do is so, for example, if you create teams, right? You create groups. Now those groups is highly follow.
Yeah.
But I have a script to make it turn on, so you can see that.
Okay.
Same as the deal, there's the team chat. So you A and B chatting all the history.
Yeah.
If you look for the Skype for business, right? It will be have called chatting history. Right?
Yeah.
But the team chat somehow, if you don't find it.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do with it?
Well, because this is
Dimitri has an answer for you back here.
I got you. So every team has us in over 65 groups. And you made a change not too long ago that by default, over 65 groups will not appear in your outlook. But if you take the PowerShell from your outlook for over 65 groups, you can switch either plug on and then it will appear in outlook.
For the chatting picture?
No, this is for the first part. This is getting your group to appear in outlook.
Oh, yeah, this is all, I have that.
It will not be in outlook. The chat history will be 18 basic context. Because it's more than just text, right? You have embedded images, files, meetings, phone calls that are all logged as part of your transfer.
And Teams doesn't
That's
support
going to be
that.
the best interface for you to work with.
Exchange, yeah, Outlook doesn't. Thank you. What Rachel said. She knows what I need.
That is the fundamental shift that Microsoft is now pulling us away from Outlook and into Teams.
Well,
There's no retention policy.
Yeah.
Email's not going into Teams from anything else.
So where I can find these chatting history, for example, we have regulation, all these internet. I want to see the Teams anytime. So we have the only location is the location policy that is search. So you search that's a project to come out. So how do you find that?
Well, one, you can grant somebody access to the channel. They can look at it in the interface. Here's that you use some of the security compliance features, things like that. The discovery, the content search, that's what we now cover messages as well. We'll be able to pull that better.
All right.
So, I mean, the question, the answer is different depending on why you care about that chat history, right? If you care about it from a compliance perspective, that answer. If you care about it from, I can find the thing where you said that you said you're going to give me that lunch sandwich. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I can't try GDPR, you're looking for HR issues, so what is the reason?
yeah.
And then here's a question for you on the new, that security compliance you're saying, will that be able to delve into private checks because you mentioned as a private channel?
I don't know. I mean, I think privacy is a relative thing, right? I mean, when you mention a private channel, not necessarily led by private companies. Anytime you're using company stock.
There's no such thing as private when you're using the company computer.
But I don't know specifically. I don't know that they.
Or not if they're gonna improve like
In what
Word,
way?
like when you open Word in the browser, half the functionality in there.
They've been doing a lot of upgrades for those systems, just incrementally. I mean, so is there a particular feature that you're looking for in one of them?
It always doesn't show the headers and footers.
Headers and footers.
And the links don't work, so if you have hyperlinks in there, they don't work.
I would check the user voice and make sure there's something in there, and then get all your friends to vote.
Yeah.
That's what it's in there. Yeah, I've never since.
And by all their friends, if you,
The header and footer thing is insane. That just needs to be worked.
Bad user experience,
yeah,
And just because there are things in it, like you can toggle between the ribbon, the simplified ribbon versus the not simplified, because that will bring in more features that are in the native app. So.
yeah,
They're definitely working on all.
Yeah.
The key is to make sure that they know that the community wants.
it has come a really long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Word Online doesn't support metadata inline, which is a big problem for a lot of my deployments.
But if you think about it, I think they're trying to play the economy, right?
Right.
Can you solve most of the problem? Can you let you do most of the things you need to do? And I think the answer is yes. It used to be absolutely, just immediate and your desktop app.
Yeah.
Now it's much, still that gap, but it's usable.
It almost seems to market has been moving us away from the client apps, everything being online. It just seems like that. You not get that feeling?
No,
We want everything to open up in the online app versus the client app. I've seen you have more issues these days.
I toggle all of those the other way by default for most of my clients.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't do that.
There are subsets of my clients that have E1 licenses and things that don't include Office. But that's usually a smaller subset. The majority are going with the client. So
I keep waiting for it to get to the point where we don't have to pay it, because to me, and usually the person who's asking me to do that is not the person who does most of the editing of Word. So
yeah.
It's a key person, the VP of something or other who never touches the computer.
Right.
At least in my experience. So I think it's gotten good enough that you can do a hell of a lot. And if you need to open it, that's not how you do it. Yeah. My people will never use this.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Actually, I don't think anybody's into work with Azure B2B, but we're finding a couple of our guest pages. We're not similar enough. We're trying to figure this out for some of our clients. When they log in, when we give them Outlook accounts, they definitely had an Office 365 account associated with it. One had a Yahoo account. And when they sign up, instead of being signed up as an external user in our Azure AD, it's signed up as a Microsoft account. And when they try to access our files on SharePoint, they can't. They get stuck in the loop. They can't log in. They can't look at it.
Yeah, you need to. So the best bet for when that happens is to physically go in and remove the Microsoft account that was created. Just delete it entirely,
yeah.
And then you should be able to recreate an Office 365 account with the same email.
So I'm not trying
after
to
that's done.
I want them to get a guest.
Right, but that's what I mean by that. When that happens, an account is created.
Is there something that they did when they followed our instructions? And, we did step-by-step instructions, and we can't repeat it ourselves to try to figure out what they did.
Is it only happening with those that have a Yahoo?
No, it happened with an Outlook account.
Oh,
it happened with a
have
Yahoo.
them.
There's only two of you that have this happen. I can see it in Azure AD. I can see it in there.
Because I think that there is documented evidence of that there's like an extra step you have to do if you're someone putting it with a Yahoo.
Yes, I did that. No, we're going to shut down. We have to add the domain before we can add the Yahoo added as a domain in Azure. But it's just, I'm trying to, we're adding more external users.
So you're locking down. So you have it set for a closed federation, and then you have to whitelist the domains. Yeah, that's problematic.
You can do that, and it didn't solve the problem. It actually came back into the Microsoft account. Just to look at anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to try to figure out how to prevent it from happening again, because everybody needs these people on board right away. And have these issues.
Yeah, for a lot of times when Microsoft accounts are created and they're the wrong type, I send people to accounts.live.com. And if they log in there, then that manages just the Microsoft account, with specifically and by Microsoft account, I mean the non-Office 365 account that they would use for the guest access. And if you have two that are associated with the same email address, which happens a lot, then you'll see things like what I get every time I log in. I'm prompted for, do you want to use this account or this account? And the phrasing for that is really weird, because it's like an account that you created or an account that was created by your IT staff. So if you ever see that prompt,
yeah. We had one client, apparently they using an alias, which is the other person's name, and that didn't work when we tried to set them up. We had to actually get their real email address, a series of numbers at blah.com.
Yeah, get better users. That's how you fix that. All right. So we're up over here. So upcoming events. We have, when is this? Tomorrow? So tomorrow at 3 o'clock, the Women IT Pros monthly call is happening. You can go to aka.ms/Women IT Pros.
Is it
Wow.
the call tomorrow that coach is gonna be? Yeah.
I'm forgetting her name.
I know.
Too, but it's all about like, yeah, this one's about like self-care.
Okay, that's, yeah,
It's cool, it's like a really.
so it's online.
So it's
National,
international.
global.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
one, there's, woman IT studies in the United States, there's one in,
Yeah.
Australia, and another one in,
Yeah.
Europe.
And actually, if you go to this link, there's a whole bunch of other groups there, like Code Girls and I forget the others, but a whole bunch of women-centric support.
I have a bunch of stickers.
The collaborative
for
stuff.
women IT folks. I like them.
Okay. So also, Boston Code Camp 32 is happening on November 23rd, and that's in Burlington, Mass. Is that here? Okay. All right, so that's in this here building. Anything else? Anybody know about any other events?
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks?
European SharePoint Conference. Not local, I don't think it's streaming.
That is not very local. So not local and not streaming.
Yeah.
But somewhere in Europe, something's happening.
Various blog posts.
All right. So somewhere in Europe, something's happening. Enjoy.
It's an awesome conference.
What's the conference called?
Dublin.
What's it called?
European SharePoint Conference.
European SharePoint Conference. Okay.
I think Marc speaking.
No, I'm not going to that.
Oh, you're not going to, I'll go to
I go to the ECS, which is in Germany.
European collaboration.
Ah,
That one's a community event.
I almost did the Scottish Summit this year, or next year. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Any other events? Community events? Learn how any of this stuff that was announced at Ignite works? Anybody? All right. If you guys think of anything, feel free to tweet it to us, and we'll definitely include it. We'll retweet it out to the group, and if it's far enough out, then we'll put it on next month's deck.
Yeah, AppPoint had a really good webinar last week with program manager from Teams, and talking about private channels.
Oh, nice.
It was really good. Yeah, that's been really, really good. That's fun, it's like a 4-hour, every 4 hours, you find the SharePoint, people are using SharePoint, people meeting, what you need.
Nice. All right. So other groups that we have locally, Hartford Office 365 user group is on the last Wednesday or Thursday of every month. I'm guessing that won't be Wednesday of this month. And that's hosted by our friend Jared. And is that on-prem or is that online only now? Oh, just on-prem? Okay. So if you guys want to go out to Hartford, and then we have the Granite State Spug, and that's on the first Thursday of the month.
Actually, Julie doesn't work on that anymore.
Julie doesn't do that anymore? Okay. Cool. We will update our deck. Thank you. And then other groups. There are many, many other groups.
Oh, and I think there's a new Power Platform user group in Hartford that's
Ooh,
starting.
that sounds cool.
Ashley Rogers, I think she's one of the coordinators.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Awesome.
Para Addict.
Nice. Yep. Nope. Yes, Dimitri.
So quick note, some of you follow us on Eventbrite, some of us have the Meetup. Meetup is owned by WeWork, and WeWork might be out of business. So, in case that disappears, you follow our website, and follow our Eventbrite page, we will continue even without Meetup. So just a quick heads up to those.
All right. Good update. Thank you. We used to work. All right. And then coming up is our holiday expert panel. So every December we do a holiday experts panel. There will be cookies and juice. It'll be awesome. And experts that may or may not be wearing Santa hats. So that's going to be in December. Unfortunately, this venue is booked for our third Thursday. So we're currently looking around to see if we can find either another date or another venue. But either way, we will be having the event, and we'll let you know when and where. So that'll happen. All right. And then what you've all been waiting for, the raffle. So we have 3 gift cards from various organizers of the group.